What's up, guys? Welcome back to Jimmy Talks. So we're seeing something now where Kash Patel's girlfriend is suing some conservative commentators because they're accusing her of being a Mossad honeypot. Instead of just ignoring them, she's suing them. So this seems kind of strange, and I wanted to look into this just a little bit. Because this situation with Alexis Wilkins and Kash Patel is one of these stories where the pieces to the puzzle don't just not fit, they seem to belong to entirely different puzzles. So when you line them all up, a very clear and deeply concerning picture comes out that any reasonable person would question. And this video isn't gossip either. This is connecting publicly available information that points to an actual national security risk. It's kind of a big deal. So let's start with the whole entire core of this problem, which is the relationship itself. On the surface, a 24-year-old woman dating a 42-year-old man isn't automatically weird, but this isn't just about an age gap. Alexis Wilkins has built her entire public brand on being a devout, traditional Christian. She's even a country singer, and she sings about an old-fashioned Christmas, and she talks about her Christian upbringing, and she wears a crucifix. Her values, as she presents them, are pretty central to her identity, just like anybody else would have values that are central to them. So Kash Patel is not just 18 years older, he's also a Hindu. So their core worldviews to life, which is the very foundation of how they see life, God, and family, are just fundamentally different. For a woman who claims to pine for traditional Christian life, to suddenly get with a man who cannot share that spiritual foundation is a massive red flag. It's a complete contradiction of what she states is her identity. It simply doesn't make any sense. Now, it's deeper than that. Let's see who she works for. Alexis Wilkins works for PragerU. This is one of the most critical pieces here. PragerU is run by Marissa Straight. It is an undeniable fact that Marissa Straight served in the IDF, and she also served in Unit 8200. This is not a conspiracy, it's like literally in her resume. Unit 8200 is Israel's top signals intelligence unit. It is basically Israel's version of the United States' NSA. Everyone, also, who serves in the IDF, swears an oath of loyalty to the State of Israel. Therefore, the CEO of the organization that Alexis works for is a former officer in an elite foreign intelligence unit. So PragerU's consistently and aggressively pushing for pro-Israel propaganda, and they make Israel look like the eternal victim and everything, and anyone who's against Israel as an irrational terrorist. So to make things simple, in other words, this is a Mossad front company. So her ties with the pro-Israel stuff goes even deeper. She has written for TPUSA, which is, again, another group known for being pro-Israel. So the founder of TPUSA, which was Charlie Kirk, we all know that, was becoming increasingly vocal about his concerns over Israeli influence in American politics before he was assassinated. He was a loud voice calling for the release of the Epstein files as well. Alexis Wilkins has also worked with Young America's Foundation and had her writing featured in more outlets, more media outlets like the Daily Caller and Town Hall, all of which are very pro-Israel. So her entire professional world is built within a network that has one primary foreign policy focus, which is advocating for Israel's interest. Now, again, let's look at who she is dating. Kash Patel is not just some guy. He is the director of the FBI. This is one of the most powerful positions in the United States. He controls the nation's most sensitive investigations. Two of the biggest cases under his control are the Jeffrey Epstein files and the investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk. His actions in these roles are beyond questionable as well. He has not released the Epstein files. This is a massive deal. The Epstein files, the whole Epstein case, it just reeks of international blackmail operation with strong evidence saying that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are Israeli intelligence. If they aren't outright Israeli intelligence, then they're assets, but still they're involved. So by keeping these Epstein files secret, Patel is protecting the powerful people whose names are in them. Even more alarming, he also fired a 27-year FBI agent for the simple act of tracking his private jet. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast and went and told everyone, hey, believe the Epstein files. We're telling you the truth, okay? Nobody believes you. These are not the actions of a transparent leader, someone who just wants to let everybody know what's going on. They are actually the actions of someone who is hiding something and shutting down anyone who tries to look. So this brings us to the honeypot idea. A honeypot is a classic spy tactic. It's honestly nothing new. An intelligence agency uses an attractive person to form a romantic relationship with whatever the target is. And the goal is to gain influence and gather secrets or create compromising situations for blackmail. This is not a wild theory. It is just a standard part of the spy playbook. It's been used for centuries by a bunch of different countries. This is nothing new. This is the CIA, KGB, Mossad. This goes back a while, and a bunch of different countries have done this. In fact, we've even seen recent news reports that Israel used female agents in Iran, and they used the romance aspect to gather intelligence. The Epstein operation itself was a colossal honeypot and blackmail scheme. So, when we see a young woman with deep ties to pro-Israel groups that are linked to Israeli intelligence suddenly in a romantic relationship with the man who is blocking investigations that would harm Israel's interest, it perfectly matches the honeypot pattern. Are we all liars here or making shit up because we're pattern recognition experts? If this just fits. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it sounds like a duck, talks like a duck, walks like a duck, it's probably a damn duck, right? So the age gap, the religious mismatch, the professional connections, this all lines up with how these operations are ran. So now, instead of ignoring the questions or simply denying them, what is the response here? Alexis Wilkins then goes to sue people like Elijah Schaffer for $5 million over tweets about it. This is just over X. This is a classic intimidation tactic known as a SLAPP lawsuit, which is a strategic lawsuit against public participation. The goal is not to win in court. The goal is to scare people into silence. So by threatening people with a financially ruinous legal battle, they hope to stop anyone else from asking the same obvious questions. If your relationship is genuine and you have nothing to hide, you don't try to bankrupt people who are simply just pointing out strange patterns. You just live your life. Who gives a shit? So this huge legal response is a huge sign that they are a little bit terrified of the conversation. In other words, you're not really making yourself look good here by doing this. So let's connect the dots one final time in a simple list for you before I leave off here. Alexis Wilkins works for groups like PragerU. She's worked with TPUSA that has leadership tied directly to Israeli military intelligence. She presents herself as a devout Christian, but she's in a serious relationship with a much older Hindu man. Kash Patel is the director of the FBI. Patel is blocking the release of the Epstein files, which likely contain blackmail on powerful people and have Israeli intelligence ties. Kash Patel then shut down the investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who the FBI barely did shit in the first place, who was criticizing the same influences Wilkins' groups support. The response to this public inquiry is not just being transparent or even just ignoring it, but it's a multi-million-dollar lawsuit to silence people. So when you look at all this together, the conclusion is not just reasonable, it's a bit obvious. Again, it looks like a duck, it swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck. To call it a duck is not retarded or crazy. It's just basic pattern recognition. So this is a serious national security issue. It's really the only reason I bring it up. If the head of the FBI is compromised through a personal relationship with someone linked to a foreign intelligence service, then America's most important investigations can be manipulated. Our security is being sold out. The lawsuit is a bully tactic to stop Americans from asking these simple questions about who really controls our government and protects our interests. The facts are all there, they're out in the open, and ignoring them is a choice, but it's not a smart one. And this channel's also talked about these ties and how Israel controls America dozens and dozens of times already. Plenty of videos on it. I mention it a lot. So when we bring all these ties together, it paints a pretty obvious picture. So that's why when people are like, well, it could just be a young, hot girl trying to date a rich, influential guy. And you know what? That's not even wrong. That's quite common, actually. But when we look at all the different links and how this random 24-year-old girl just happens to get into all these organizations and groups and positions of power with who she's dating and all that, it does seem a little bit strange, does it not? And it's not a bad thing to ask questions. If I'm totally wrong and so are the other people, then hey, so be it. We're just inquiring. We're simply just noticing patterns. Nothing wrong with that. I think skepticism is healthy. But yeah, this whole situation is just a little bit strange. Now, that's all I'm leaving off with today. America first. God bless you and your families. Jimmy Talks out.